And you should know.
I've got,
You should know.
I have too much history dealing
What happened?
with individuals who
Star decided to pour her water on Roy.
benignly and very passively have gone into the situation.
I cannot hold my water.
You could not hold your water, man.
I just, if I'm dying,
And begin.
You ready?
Sandra,
We should have two close.
You good, Sandra?
Sandra, you good?
I forget it. I'm good.
Good evening, everyone. Notice is hereby given that the Lagos Vista City Council will hold a regular meeting on Thursday, June 6, 2019, and beginning with no executive session because we did not have an executive session. If we need to have one, we'll have it at the end. As prescribed by VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as given in the meeting notice. I'd like to call to order and take a roll call. We have all the city council, the mayor is not here.
Don's not here.
Excuse me, and Don's not here. Don Barthelow's not here. We have Joshua Ray, we have Roy, we have Star, we have Sandra, we have Aaron, and we have David Street. Okay? You know their last names. I don't have to call out everybody's last name. I'm keeping this informal here. And we have one guest in the house. Okay? Okay? Any citizen comments in order? In ordinance with the Open Meeting Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions as any items not on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, the pledge.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you very much. Let me see. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weatherly.
Come on in.
Come on in, sir. Oh,
We got a
okay.
seat for you.
All right. I just felt naked out there with no one in the audience. You could have a seat.
That's not
Okay.
the audience. I think that's.
That's the police department.
Items of community interest pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415. The city council may report on any of the following items: expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences, information regarding holiday schedules, recognition of individuals, proclamations, reminders regarding citizen council events, reminders regarding community events, health and safety announcements. Anyone want to start out on that?
Mr. Mayor, I would start off first with a expression of gratitude and thanks to the many citizens that have, I know, put up prayers for me and have been concerned about my recent surgery. I appreciate your interest, I appreciate your support, and I appreciate your prayers. Thank you.
Anyone else down here?
Mayor, I have an expression of condolence to Miss Dee Graff. She's a widow of Bob Graff for the loss of her husband. Bob Graff was the chairman of the Board of Adjustment for a very long time, and I happened to have served with him when I was liaison to the Board of Adjustment last year. I think that he will be missed greatly by our community. He was certainly a pillar of our community.
Okay. I would like to thank all those that sent cards and sent flowers and everything, and you gave donations to the charities of my father. I appreciate it and thank everyone for that. I'd like to talk about two things. One, I'd like to talk about Lago Fest. Lago Fest was originally planned for May 11th. But as you know, Mother Nature has other plans for us, which meant that our event had to be canceled. The Lagafest team was able to find the one and only date left in 2019 to be able to hold this event and get it up and running for all to enjoy. So Lagafest 2019 will be held on Sunday, June 16th at the Barcade Park from 12 until noon. Like in the past, Cab Metro...
12 until 9.
Till 9, I'm sorry. Like in the past years, Cab Metro will be providing transportation at this event. Please park at the Lago Vista Middle School or the Lago Vista Village and catch the buses, which will run throughout the event. Please note that there will not be shuttle pickup at City Hall this year. Please remember that coolers, pets, etc. are not permitted on the buses. The boat ramp will be closed, and so boats coming into the event will have to dock lakeside. Volunteers are still needed and can view and sign up for shifts at lagofest.com/volunteer. If people were previously signed up for the beer tent, they will not be needed because the Bar Arts Company will be staffing and serving at the beer pavilion. So any volunteers that signed up for the beer tent that want to participate in Lagerfest, please go online and there's different shifts that people can sign up for. VIP tickets are now on sale for $80. Tickets can be purchased online with a credit card, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express. VIP tickets will be available at will call at the check-in at K Oaks the day of the event. The VIP package includes a parking pass, automatic sign-up for the raffle, local craft beer and wine from Whitestone Brewery and Brent Oak Winery, hearty snacks and afternoon buffet from Brock's Italian Market Cafe and H-E-B. The VIP offers a premium festival experience under a large shaded tent with great views of the stage and lake. We are so fortunate that all the original bands and food vendors were available to accommodate us and will be out in full force. Lagerfest is fun for all ages with volleyball, games, face painting, a petting zoo sponsored by Tiny Tales to You. Lagerfest merchandise will be on sale at the festival, t-shirts, koozies, and hats. Please come join us and have fun on June 16th. Thank you very much on that. There was one other thing that I need to talk about. I was asked by several citizens to honor a young lady named Marcia Werner. So I'm honoring her for her work that she has done with the Old Farm Community Food Pantry. She collects foods, and I'm told it's hundreds of pounds from H-E-B and other sources every week. It includes fresh produce, meat, and bakery goods. She loads it in a van and then unloads it to the pantry. Every Saturday, she oversees giving away all the food collected to anyone who wants it. She pays out of her own pocket for the gas she uses, getting the products, the meats, and the refrigeration and air conditioning units needed to keep the product fresh. Marcia has been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. The city of Lago Vista thanks you for your involvement in the community. Anybody else have anything else?
Mayor, there is the Arkansas Bend grand opening is on June 15th, so that's the day before Lago Fest, and that's at 10 a.m. So if anyone can be there, it'll probably be a few words to start out. Gerald Doherty is hosting that grand opening and ribbon cutting for the county, and so hopefully some of us can be there at 10 a.m. June 15th as they kick off the official full park opening for Arkansas Bend.
Got it. Action items. We have 7 action items, so I'm going to start with number 1 and just work our way down. Discussion and consideration of resolution number 19-1801, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, appointing individuals to terms as members of the Youth Advisory Committee.
Mayor, this item has come before us before in the discussion. Mayor Tidwell presented the items and asked that City Council consider appointing new members. The Youth Advisory Council is a little different from all of our other groups in that at the end of the school year in May, some of the terms expire. The terms are for those that are graduating. And so at this time, you have 4 applications and 4 positions.
Correct.
Mayor Tidwell was recommending approval for all 4 of the applicants to the Youth Advisory Committee.
Yeah. The names are Lance Shook, Jaden Hester, Haley Bransom, and Ryder Phillips. Anyone make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve resolution number 19-1801, appointing these 4 individuals to the Youth Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
Orange seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays.
We'll get those letters of acceptance out to those individuals so that they can get together now.
Okay. Second, discussion and consideration of resolution number 19-1802, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, canceling the regular City Council meeting scheduled for July 4, 2019.
Mayor, we discussed this at the last council meeting. The informal discussion was due to the July 4th holiday. We're not recommending that we would have a council meeting on the 4th. So we looked at, should we have an alternative date based on the items currently in the system now? Staff recommends canceling the July 4th meeting and keeping the second July meeting as July 18th. And that would be the only meeting that we have in July. This will coincide with the change that the P&Z made to change their meeting schedule. So this will still work well within the change to the P&Z schedule. I do not think this will impact our other committees at all.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve or adopt resolution number 19-1802.
I'll second it.
Tim seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Okay, discussion and consideration of the wholesale water agreement with Draper's Estate. And Aaron is going to talk to us about this
41-page document.
41-page document that she has sent us.
Mayor, let me tell you, so this document's one we've talked about for quite some time and working together with Draper Estates to provide a formal agreement for potentially a long-term water agreement with Draper Estates, which is outside of the existing city limits. Aaron drafted this agreement and we printed a hard copy. It's not online and it's not in the packet. So we printed a hard copy so that Aaron could provide some oversight. What we're recommending is that we, after discussion tonight, if there's any additional discussion, then we would take this potentially to the July 18th meeting.
Got it. Aaron, the floor is yours.
I agree with what city manager has stated, that taking this to the July 18th will give us opportunity to get any final feedback from Council for Draper Estates. As you know, that that system is owned by a private entity who actually lives in Colorado. And so he is, the council needs to discuss that with them. One recommendation might be to have a copy of this, the final version that with the agreed upon terms provided to the citizens, just so that they're aware of what the situation is, since this particular agreement wouldn't be with any of the actual folks who are here in the city, or in Draper Estates. My understanding is that the person who actually runs the water system for that gentleman who owns it lives in the community. And so it would be important that he understands what's in this agreement, what's in the final version that you would look to adopt or approve. so that they're fully aware of where they're going. I have provided information, have received information from their council that, the owner of the system, water system, might be interested in either selling or giving the system to the city, and so that may be a further discussion at a future date, once we have some additional information. If there are further discussions of this, I would recommend that we have those in executive session if you wish.
Got it. Any other comments from anyone on the, okay.
Mayor, if we're good on this one, what we're recommending to staff, it would be to table
Right.
this one to the July 18th meeting.
Correct, I
To
was gonna
direct.
ask, can I get a,
I will make a motion that we table this until the July 18th meeting.
can I get a second on that?
I will second it.
All right, Tim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, now we get into the sale of properties. Discussion and consideration on the sale of real property located on the corner of Northland and Loman Ford Road.
Mayor, all four of these items are in response to the recent action by the city council to effectively place strips of land that the city received in a court judgment for sale to adjacent property owners. So all four of these items are going to be related back to that previous action by the council. This first action request comes from Sharif Ali. And as previously stated, this property is located at the corner of Northland and Loman. It is opposite of Phoenix Automotive. This particular individual is looking to develop that lot as a commercial lot. So in order to utilize two lots, he is requesting to purchase the strip of land that splits the two lots so that he can develop those two lots collectively and complete his commercial development. He's actually come before the city before on the request, and now this is something that would complete that process. And so for each of these, Mayor, one last comment, there's a map attached just for your reference for where it is. What we're asking is if approved by council, if council approves the sale of this property and then allows me to complete those transactions. If that action's taken for each item, then each of these will not come back before council. We'll complete those internally and we'll complete a deed. The purchaser will provide the payment. We'll exchange those goods and services, and they'll have land, we'll have cash.
And this 6,000 square feet of property is approximately $8,400 that we'll be collecting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Aaron.
Yes.
Do we need to consider each one of these individually, or can we do this as a group?
It's recommended you do them individually,
All right.
just
That's
in
fine.
case any council member has a question or concern about one or the other items.
Okay.
All right, then, Mr. Mayor, I make a,
Wait, discussion, please.
yes, sir.
So the discussion here has to do with the size of this particular lot. It's a lot approximately 6,000 square feet, and the sale price or the purchase price that is being talked about here is $1.40 a square foot. So the total purchase amount will be approximately $8,400.
Correct.
So that, I just wanted to be sure that we read that into the record.
And Mayor, what'll happen is I put the approximates in here just so that council knows the general items. What'll happen on each of these is we will finalize what the exact measurements are, calculate the exact measurement by the $1.40 square foot price, and then we'll have a definite final price for each individual, and then we'll make that transaction happen. What I didn't want to do is basically give council what I had as exact numbers, then we'd have to bring it back if we had the exact numbers wrong, which could happen. So this is saying, hey, you approve that description of the land based on the map, and then we'll finalize the exact figures and then bring that back. And what staff will be doing at this time, for any of these transactions, we've talked about this before with council, but for any of these transactions that are approved and executed, we'll take those funds and put those back into that property fund, pretty much. Just an allocation that sets it separate from other items, which would basically give us the ability to buy and sell land out of this fund. All that would be separate than if any sale were to happen with the Marshall's Point home, but everything else we're going to operate with inside of that fund.
Any other discussion, thoughts? Okay. Any action?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we authorize the sale of the property at the corner of Northland and Loman Ford and give city manager authorization to proceed with the sale.
I second that.
Dick made the motion and Arch seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Motion approved. Discussion and consideration of sale of real property to Joe and Catherine Reedholm?
Reedholm, yes, sir, Mayor. So this is a follow-up. Joe and Catherine Reedholm have requested to purchase approximately 1,105.8 square feet of land at the same $1.40 per square foot amount for a total purchase of an estimated $1,548.12. The Reedholms own two lots. They own Lot 32139 Highland Lake Estate, Section 32, and Lot 32140 Highland Lake Estate, Section 32, and they are requesting to purchase the property adjacent and allowable to their lots.
Any discussion? From looking at it, it just seemed like it was a strip of land that
Yeah.
connected the two pieces of property. No discussion, any motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the sale of the property. Can we just do it to Joe and Catherine Reedholm?
Is it
And
no?
that the city manager have the authorization to proceed with the sale.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None. Motion passed. Discussion and consideration of sale of real estate property to Frank and Beth Galetta.
Mayor, this item, similar to the previous two items, there is one difference here. Frank and Beth Coletta requested to purchase a strip of land behind 3606 Rockefeller Cove at the $1.40 per square foot. The estimated size of their strip is 1,000 square feet. Estimated total price will be $1,400. The difference in this request is Mr. Coletta secured the appraisal that we're using for all of these property purchases. Before, historically, the city did something very similar. They established a rate to sell property. So to do this process, when council made the motion to move forward with the sale of these strips of land, we needed a price from an appraiser. Mr. Coletta was the first to complete the appraisal process, and that was just based on his desire to make it happen. Others approached the city, but never wanted to have an appraisal. And so what Roy and I have been telling them is, if you want to do this, the city's not going to pay for an appraisal. You get that, bring it back to us. This is the process. Because we were never guaranteed that if we paid for an appraisal, anyone would be purchasing any of the land. So what Mr. Coletta in his letter has requested is that instead of paying $1,400, he purchased the property for $1,125, which virtually would reimburse him for the $275 he paid for the appraisal. We do have a copy of the appraisal, and we have a copy of the bill where he paid $275 for it. So their request is that they purchased the approximately 1,000 square feet of land for $1.40 per square foot, minus the $275 that they paid for the appraisal. The reason we do not have this request, many others, is because no one else had to complete an appraisal or secure an appraisal for us to use this process.
Any discussion on this?
Mayor, I would consider that to be a good move on their part to have secured the appraisal, and I think they should be reimbursed in an offhanded way for their ability to make that happen. So I would approve, I would make a motion that we approve the sale of that lot for $1,125.
Can I, before
Well, no,
you
no,
make
get a
motion, could I
second,
get
I'll,
the discussion?
second, and I'll come back.
Huh?
Get a second and I'll.
second.
Okay, Tim, we have a motion and a second?
I agree generally. The question, or the issue is, what if somebody else comes in and they do an appraisal? Are we going to give everybody that does an appraisal credit?
Mayor, that was one of our concerns as staff is what we had in the very beginning is we came out with this appraisal and the $1.40 per square foot. Initially, I thought this seems like a very fair number. A couple property owners came back to us and said, wow, $1.40 per square foot, that's incredibly high. I can secure a different appraisal and get a lower rate. So what did we tell them? Go secure a better appraisal. We'll take that to council at a better rate. So for us, our whole goal was to have one, yes, someone else can come back, and if council would have the same type of request for every property owner, then it's a challenge for us as staff to recommend the reimbursement, but it makes sense. But you'll have this again for potentially if two people we've talked to want to come back and get their own appraisal, they may ask for that back.
How do you know they paid $275 for the appraisal?
Mayor, the way on this one we know is we have a copy of the appraisal and we have a copy of the fee paid. So
Okay.
for this one, we have that documentation. I actually have it in this wonderful folder that Mr. Coletta submitted to us. That's how we verified cost for it.
So if we followed that same procedure throughout all these different sales, I would still consider that to be fair. As long as they can show that they have actually gotten an appraisal and show what they paid for the appraisal, I think offsetting that, the cost of the lot by the appraisal price would be fair.
The only problem with that is I see, with all the different strips that we have, I'm assuming we're going to use the $1.40 for future strips that we,
Right, if they settle for the $1.40 without securing an appraisal, that's what they pay. But if they go out and actually pay, like this gentleman did, paid for an
then we
actual
shouldn't be
appraisal.
responsible for that. If they're disputing the $1.40 that we come up with from that appraisal, and that's what we're using, and all of a sudden they go out and get a different appraisal, and they come up with a different figure, I'm not gonna pay for someone else's appraisal.
Well, the appraisal probably has more to do, or has to do with, obviously, with the price that they're paying, but the appraisal also will give them the actual square footage and a description of that particular strip of land that they're purchasing. So I think it goes further than just getting a dollar figure. They'll get
Legal description.
legal description, meets and bounds, and the whole bit. So if they're willing to go through those steps, or to that extent, I think that it's fair to allow them whatever it is that they paid for the appraisal.
I would go along with paying for this one because this is what we are using for the basis for our price for this land. But from this point on, my attitude would be, if you don't want to pay the price that we're charging for the land and you want to go out and get your own appraisal, that's your cost.
Correct.
We have an appraisal, we have a price, this is what everybody's paying. You want to pay this price, you don't need an appraisal, you don't need to spend that money. But if you're going to go get your own appraisal, get your own price, you can bring it back to us, but we're still probably going to want $1.40 a square foot. Just because somebody else goes out there and says, oh, it's not worth more than 90 cents a square foot. Are we going to sell the rest of the land for 90 cents a square foot?
Again, this would all be based on the actual appraisal, so I still don't see the point of making it difficult for someone to,
Well, I don't want to
Well,
pay
I
for
don't make it
everybody's
difficult.
appraisal. If I want an appraisal on a piece of property, I go get my own appraisal, it's my responsibility to cover the cost of my appraisal.
Can we disclose that when we put them up, saying if you want to, then the cost of the appraisal is yours? On any future purchases, disclose that?
I'm fine with that.
I think that would probably be a better way to do it.
What happens, Mayor, we can easily tell that to somebody, and that, when I say we, that would be Roy and me when we're talking to them. But still, when it comes back to council, you're still going to vote on them individually. And so even if we staff give them that informal statement, and you guys get up here and decide 4 out of 7 says, well, the heck with it. You know, Ricky Steamboat decided it was really only $1.20, and it seems to be fair and make the decision, then I think that's for the next one. And I know that's
Yeah.
probably what Council
Yeah.
Robbins is talking about down the line,
Down
what's
the
going to
line,
happen.
Yeah.
And we're good, staff-wise, our ultimate goal is to get these properties out of the hands of the city to the adjacent property owners, because we feel that in the end, that was the intent of the original acquisition. And we see that there's value now to the property owners and there's less value to the city. There are some of these that we've discussed as the council that are going to remain with the city that we may have value for. Others, like these, we just don't have substantial value.
Well, we have a motion and we have a second. Can we get a vote on it? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No nays? Motion approves. But Aaron, can you put on your list to check out maybe us having a resolution on future items? So that we get something on, so that when Josh brings us another one, that we got something to refer for, say, here you go, here's your document, man. I don't want to have to vote on it each time. Discussion and consideration of sale of real estate property for Mitchum Smallwood and Conrad Paulson.
Mayor, same philosophy as the previous three. Michon Smallwood and Conrad Paulson have requested to purchase a strip of land behind 3603 Roosevelt Cove. So this is the second one you're considering in Roosevelt Cove area at a price of $1.40 per square foot. At the time, I didn't have the square footage on here. Most of these, from what we're seeing throughout the city, are going to be from about $1,000 total to approximately $1,600. The normal behind someone's property, that's the range that we're seeing. We do have the map now, and we will have the specifics. I think this one totaled out to be about $1,200 because it's a little smaller. But again, if approved, we'll finalize it with the hard numbers and the hard figures. Remember, anyone that wants to purchase these strips, they're only allowed to purchase the property that is directly adjacent to their property unless they secure approval from the adjacent property owners to secure their property. And so that's something that we have to remember. If someone were to come to you and say, hey, all these people back here behind me, they do not want this piece of land. I need to get it all. We're having them right now. They would either, we've got a waiver, they can send an email, but we've got an official process that we'll be going through so that basically this guy says, I don't want it, he can buy it because this property is then incorporated into their overall property. So
Okay.
same thing for this one. We only allow them to purchase the amount that is directly adjacent to their property without further permissions from property owners.
Got it. Any discussion on this?
I'd like to add to the discussion that we had earlier about the prior piece of property. I think that when we get into contracts with the people that are acquiring these pieces of property, I think that part of that contract might be that they will be subject to a higher amount if the appraisal comes in at a higher amount than what the $1.40 would yield. In other words, in this particular case, we're talking about something that was something like $1,400, and then we discounted it by the $275 that they paid for the actual appraisal. But what if the appraisal had come back at a higher value than?
Would we even see it?
Well, I mean, if they present an appraisal that says, here's the appraisal, it's going to be
I wouldn't.
instead of 100.
Yeah.
Well, then they would be stuck with $1.40, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah.
So,
but
Correct.
better
so we
than
wouldn't be,
$1.52.
so we wouldn't be losing anything there.
Gotcha. But if I'm using $1.40 as the appraisal cost of that particular lot, and they have to get their own appraisal, and they come back and it's 165, we'll never see that appraisal. That won't even come to our attention.
So then
So
there's
we'll
no
sell
loss
it at the
on,
140.
so, yeah, so there would be no loss on
No
our.
loss on our part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think if we have that as a thought, then things will work out.
Okay.
Approve the sale of real property to Mitch and Smallwood and Conrad Paulson, and authorize the city manager to proceed with the sale.
I'll second that.
Art seconds it. Dick made the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Motion approved.
Mayor, what we're going to do, now that we've approved these first four, we're going to go ahead and push this information out. We're going to start sharing it more often throughout our social media. We'll probably add this into the newsletter. We're going to just get the information out so that all the people we've been talking to, maybe they're not paying attention to the actions of the council. I know that blows some of our minds, but they may not be tuned in tonight. So that if you talk to anyone, send them to me, send them to Roy. We'll go ahead and have our IT department pull up the map. We'll get them in, get them processed, and bring information back. Or, as you said earlier, if we're able to pull together a blanket type of resolution that processes these, we will work on it. But we want to get as many of these through the system as possible so that we don't have to keep dealing with these properties.
Gotcha.
That's our goal.
Okay. Anything else? Next item on our agenda is going to be staff report from Roy Jambro on the Lago Vista City Council will hold a public hearing and consider possible action on an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending section 11-60 subsection C, chapter 1, item C1 of chapter 14, the zoning ordinance regarding standards and requirements for ridge posts to be used in the evaluation of special exceptions to height standards applications. Mr. Roy,
And this is a public hearing.
this is a public, I need to open the public hearing?
Please, sir.
Can I open the public hearing at 7:07?
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure we have a report from the Planning and Zoning Commission because there's no recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. In accordance with the state law, the governing body may not hold a public hearing until it receives the final report of the Zoning Commission unless it passes a different ordinance. So I'm not sure we have a report from P&Z, and if we don't, we can't open the public hearing.
And that may be my fault, the language I chose. They, in fact, had a public hearing, took a vote. The vote was 5-0 to recommend the ordinance as written.
And Mayor, all I would ask is, I don't know the specifics of the law. We'll ask Aaron if the verbal report is sufficient to open the public hearing, or is it not?
So the law's not, doesn't specify what exactly that report has to, what form that report has to come in. 211007 of the local government code, subsection B says the zoning commission shall make a preliminary report and hold the hearings.
Okay.
Before submitting the final report to the governing body. The governing body may not hold a public hearing until it receives a final report from the zoning commission unless the governing body by ordinance provides that a public hearing is to be held after the notice required by section 211006A, jointly with the public hearing required to be held by the zoning commission. In either case, the governing body may not take action on the matter until it receives the final report from the zoning commission. I'm not familiar with what if it's customary for the zoning commission to provide a formal written report, or if that report is, it's customary that report is provided through staff.
Yeah.
Are we more comfortable with a written document?
I mean, I attend all the planning and zoning. I was there when,
Mayor, I'm okay with a staff verbal report
Right.
to get beyond this. I just didn't want to open the public hearing until we at least found that out.
okay,
I went
okay,
back and read
okay.
my staff report, and I wasn't as explicit as
Yeah.
I should have been,
Yeah.
that this was their recommendation
Yeah.
and the vote.
Yes, because everything that he has in this is the recommendation that the P and Z recommended.
This is not the staff report that
Thanks.
was used for
Yeah.
them.
That
I wasn't clear.
to me. Thank you, sir.
But I was there also,
I
so.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Roy.
It's just poor choice of language, and I apologize.
So the public hearing was open at 7:07. Roy, give us a,
Yes, sir. I
Your
mean, the
feedback.
background of this, actually dates to the day I joined the staff, when they were having these. It's been what I might call a chronic problem, getting the planning commission comfortable, because getting ridge poles that they were confident were absolutely accurate. And that discussion has gone on, off and on. We did a fairly comprehensive amendment where we discussed it and decided that, what would happen would be is that, because in a lot of cases, people were never putting the ridge pole up even. We had those issues as well. They read the ordinance and just thought, well, heck, that's not that important, we won't do it. And the commission would go out and they would see, go out and see the property, and the ridge pole wouldn't be up, and they put it up the day before the hearing. We've had a lot of examples where the efforts were just poor, and there was always a lack of comfort level. Is this really accurate enough for us to rely on? And the discussion has always been, about giving them the comfort level where they'll do what the ordinance intended, which was simply to defer the ones that they weren't comfortable with. And we've had a number of discussions over time, and I think we finally reached something that gave them confidence, was to create a degree of verticality. It's supposed to be true. Well, they're never absolutely true, but some cases they were leaning over at 45-degree angles. They put them up a month before the actual public hearing. In many cases, they deteriorate over time because of wind and other factors. They fall into the ground. What they basically decided is you give us a degree of verticality and quantify it before you accept it. It's going to be true within 5 degrees of vertical. I can do that with software. I gave you an example of how I can use PowerPoint to draw the red lines and show you exactly how close to vertical it is. The staff will not even put it on the agenda if it's not within 5 degrees of vertical when we inspect it. They will then have a number of markings that will help them better judge whether the thing is accurate in the first place and was actually to any real, effort put into it. If it deteriorates over time and is no longer within 5 degrees of vertical, they'll have, visual documentation that it's such, and they will now be more comfortable to defer the applications that they don't think the effort is sufficient for them to accurately evaluate the application.
Yeah.
So I think we finally reach where something that they can accept, where they have comfort level. When they have an inadequate, effort, they'll turn it down and say, we'll see you next month, go fix this ridge pole. And that's always been something we had to get them to where they were comfortable with that, and we finally got there through a lot of discussion.
And from attending that meeting, it also appeared that it would give the people that live nearby an opportunity to see an accurate ridge pole and have more comfort zone, that the ridge pole heights are accurate and they
Right.
can.
And that was part of the problem with just the 2 markings. As it deteriorates and leans over time, how accurate was it, when it was looked at originally? With all these additional markings on there, they feel comfortable that they can now tell. The staff, we're better able to judge those things, but it wasn't doing any good for the staff to be able to do that. It's the commission members that needed to be able to judge the accuracy. And I think we're all agreed that this will give them the tools that will make them comfortable to defer cases that ought to be deferred.
And we are getting an accurate elevation.
Initially, now they've always had the right to say, we don't believe this. We want a surveyor to certify that and defer it for that reason. But once again, it's been a comfort level. When is it appropriate for them to do that? They now feel like with all the additional markings, that they will be better placed to say, this isn't accurate. You know, this is not close enough to vertical to where we can judge it. And when we give them that photographic evidence and say, well, once upon a time, this was within 5-degree vertical, and now it's at 45 degrees, they know it's not accurate anymore.
And Roy, I was at the discussion that P and Z had about these ridge poles too, and I remember that there was a discussion about standardizing the ridge poles so that they could be more acceptable and more reliable was actually it. So we talked about, I listened to them talk about the possibility of using metal ridge poles, which could be extended to whatever height was necessary to show that.
That is part of what the discussion was in the recommendation. You know, our packet in the past has simply been the ordinance. Our packet in the future, as we've been going to in other cases, is now going to be some advice and show them how to do a good ridge pole, show them that it needs to be braced, show them that because the high winds we suffer here, they'll be better with bracing that they can adjust over time if need be. You know, all these things are going to be put into a much more elaborate packet. And we talked about even having the city do that and charging. But, you know, it became a matter of, do we really want to devote staff time and charge people for an effort that, you know, in theory, the contractor ought to be just as qualified as the staff to erect a ridge pole. You know, is that really the appropriate response? And once again, we kept coming back to the fact that let's give these guys the opportunity, and if they're not going to make a serious effort, those guys are the ones that need to be deferred until they correct it.
Right, but the standardization, that, as I recall, as part of the discussion was that when you're erecting ridge poles, as has been done recently, which has been done with wooden poles that bend and so forth, the discussion also involved using metal poles that won't bend and that are more easily braced and more easily kept upright, I believe. So my feeling at this point is that if we make that a requirement and make that part of our ordinance, that the contractors erect that kind of a ridge pole, then we can hold them to that and be more certain of verticality and also that they're easily marked and that those markings will remain where they can be looked at.
We've had good ridge poles made out of wood. They were well braced. We've had poor ridge poles made out of metal. They weren't braced.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, the unbraced length is what makes them sag.
Right.
If the unbraced length is 20 feet or more, it's not going to remain vertical, if it ever would be vertical.
So you're not in favor of the ordinance?
Well, these guys are contractors. I mean, they ought to be able to erect a ridge pole. And what I'm saying is the guys that are not putting forth a legitimate effort, that's really the problem. If they're going to be building a house, my heavens, they ought to be able to erect a pole that's reasonably accurate, you know, using materials. I mean, and particularly in our heavily wooded lots, you can use trees to brace these things. I mean, there's lots of opportunities. You can have guy wires. I mean, you know, the bottom line is if you're going to have a metal pole that doesn't need to be braced, it better look like a street light. And that's kind of over the top, expensive and difficult. And it's not that complicated if they're really willing to put the effort. And that's kind of with the discussion. Do we want to raise the cost of the people that are willing to put up a good ridge pole? And like I said, we've had some good ones made out of wood. In fact, Lakeway used to have one on their website that they were recommending as a sample. It was made out of wood.
I think reliability is probably the bigger issue.
The unbraced length is really the issue. If you have something 20 feet tall with no bracing on it, good luck. You'll have to have something incredibly rigid and expensive.
Right. and over time will fail, I think.
It needs to be braced
Yeah.
and needs to be braced well. Now, like I said, we intend to give them samples. We need to emphasize that not only do you need to be able to brace it, you need to use bracing that can be adjusted over time.
Right.
You know, because over the course of a month, you know, we've had a very good ridge pole laying on the ground after some, that was too far up near the airport. It gets pretty windy up there.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other discussion? Any citizen comments on this issue? No? Okay. So I guess I can close the public hearing at this time? Or do you have anything that you want to say, Mr.?
What?
Mayor, I would say if we can leave it open
Leave it open?
for the next one,
Okay,
then we can continue at the next meeting.
got it.
Actually take-
That's my motion, but you want to close the public hearing, I'll move to postpone till July the 18th. If you close the public hearing.
Just leave it open.
I'll
No,
just leave it.
just leave it open.
We'll just leave it open to
January
the,
18th.
to the next meeting. That's what they would, yes. Can I just leave it open, or do I need to close it and then open it again at the next meeting?
Mr. Mayor, you can leave it open, and we'll close it at the conclusion of the.
Next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's no requirement for two public meetings, just the one. right?
No, now we're going to have a discussion. The document, the agenda calls for us to consider it. Does not say discuss and possible action. Secondly, the ordinance has a dramatic error in it. If you take a look at page 30 of the backup, the ordinance, aside from the caption, adopts the 2015 International Building Codes, not a zoning ordinance. So we've got to table it anyway, but however we get to July is fine.
I
Well, my
think
question was, is there a requirement for two?
public
open
hearing.
Public hearings?
No.
Or just the one?
No, there's not a requirement for two public hearings, but if there is a need to make
To modify?
substantive changes, then that direction should come from council, and you can close it and hold another one at the next meeting, if that's your choice. Be cleaner that way.
Mayor, one comment though, the struggle, if you close this public hearing, you're not going to have another public hearing on the next
Until the
June
18th.
meeting because of advertising. So,
Notice.
yeah, we won't have sufficient time to advertise for that notice again. So if we're leaving the public hearing open, and if we make any type of changes to what was presented here, you'll still give the citizens the opportunity, based on what comes out in the next agenda packet, to make public comment on those items. I can understand exactly what Councilor Robbins is saying. For any of the substantive changes that'll be made for what's presented in the packet, we want to allow citizens to comment on it.
Okay. From a mayor standpoint, and since I'm representing the mayor, I recommend that we keep it open and everybody can work at making the necessary changes that you would like to make, Mr. Frank. You can get with Roy and make.
He's got
change.
it.
All right, and we'll just keep it open and deal with it at the next meeting. All righty. Everybody good with that?
Works.
All right, so what else we got? Okay, next thing is the consent agenda. I guess approval of the May 2nd, 2019 and the May 16th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Is everyone comfortable with the minutes? Any comments on the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Dick and a second from Arch. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? No nays. Motion approves. What else is up here? I think we're ready for Mr. Josh to talk to us.
Mayor, I do not have a report.
No report. So we move on. Anything to be added to the next meeting, which would be June
20th.
20th. Any topics at this time? No topics at this time?
But we will, not at that date, but at the July meeting, we will have a legislative update based on the actions that were taken in this most recent legislative session. The mayor and I are going on June 24th, I believe, to a TML legislative update. If any other counselors would like to go on that date, just let us know and we can get it scheduled. It's in Austin, I do believe, and it's a morning to maybe 1:30.
What date is it?
June 24th, is that right, Sandra? I think it's June 24th. It's
What day of
It's
the
like
week?
8 o'clock in the morning or something.
yeah, it starts at 8, goes to 1:30. I think that's a Monday,
Yeah,
because I think
I
7.
tried to get a hotel room.
So, but it's that morning. So we're in Austin. It starts at 7:30 actually. So 7:30 has a little breakfast just to look at it. And if it's something you want to go attend, what they're going to do is just give us that brief overview. Anyway, my point being, what we'll do is we'll bring the materials that they provide us. We'll put it back into a report to council at the July meeting. So we're going to put those items that we get on the July meeting.
Okay.
Because those will directly impact what this council will be doing for the next year, 2 years.
Got it.
Some immediately.
It's on a Monday, yes. July 24th is a Monday. Okay. Anything that we have to go into executive session for? Nope.
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't think so unless you want to have a further discussion about the Draper Estates matter.
I'd like to give more information on Draper Estates, but not at this
We can certainly
time.
have that at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, what we'll do in regards to that item, if we're not going into executive, we'll send you out the electronic, so you can have that copy as well. And then we'll schedule this for the next meeting for an executive, so then we can walk through it with Aaron at
Okay.
that meeting and make sure we've got the review. So anything that you read at this point, just make sure to provide us some feedback if
Okay.
you need us before the meeting.
Got it. Okay. So if that's the case, I recommend that we adjourn this meeting at 7:27. Done.
Question. Talking over this guy. Is our favorite council member still on property up at the airport?
I never saw it on the